Good morning, Mets fans. It's your guy Wardy, and as you see, we're back at it with the latest Big Mets update segment, as we have so much to get into that has transpired in Mets land over the past 24 hours. So without further ado, let's break down all the key topics, as we have a huge report here on Francisco Lindor, certainly a positive one, finally. More on his timetable, when he'll be returning, and everything in between. Kodai Senga, Paul Blackburn, Drew Gilbert, could he potentially warrant a call-up, and more. That is what we're going to get into in today's discussion. But let's not forget how we got here, as the Mets took down the Philadelphia Phillies last night by a final score of 6-3. We broke that down in a recap video, but simply put, I am still absolutely floored, not only with the play of Luis Angel Acuna, but the continued dominance of Mr. Francisco Eltro Alvarez. Both these guys we saw there with home runs in the second inning. That was absolutely massive. Acuna's third of the year. Alvarez with 4 or 5 over his past 10 games now. And then as we advance forward, after the game was tied 2-2, after that Nick Castellanos game-tying home run off the Simone southpaw, who was otherwise dominant yet again, and Sean Manaea, our true ace there, throwing from the left side. Then as we advance to the 7th inning with 2 on, less than 2 out, Brandon Himo driving in a run, which was massive. And then we see Francisco Eltro Alvarez yet again there, driving in a pair with a double. And then Pete Alonso with the icing on the cake, that little bloopy that they somehow could not catch there in shallow center in the 8th, made it 6-3. Edwin Diaz shutting the door down with the 4-out save. That was absolutely massive, including that huge strikeout on Kyle Schwarber, looking to end the 8th inning. But guys, let's talk not only about that amazing victory, but these huge updates that we have to get into right now. Let's start with the man of the hour, the man that you want to talk about, and that is Mr. Francisco MVP Lindor. And as we know, Lindor, he officially received a back injection over the past 24 to 48 hours, and he's feeling better because of it. It pretty much felt inevitable that the Mets were going to be going down a route like this. Obviously, they try their best to avoid this first, to see if he can get better and heal up without needing any type of external help to that degree. However, it felt warranted, especially with only a couple games left this season now, and wanting Lindor back as soon as humanly possible. So Lindor feels great. He's feeling better than what he certainly was with his soreness after receiving this injection. And as you guys could see pre-game yesterday, that was him warming up and playing some catch and looking comfortable in doing so. Just to find out shortly after from Carlos Mendoza, Mets skipper himself, that Lindor is expected to return to the Mets as soon as this Tuesday. Yes, you heard that correctly, everybody. We're looking at that Atlanta Braves series for Lindor to make his return. And that's not only exciting for Francisco Lindor, but I'm also really excited to see how this pans out with someone like Luis Angel Acuna. Acuna, who's been dominant for the Mets since being called up, is a guy that absolutely deserves to continue to play every day right now. So what do you do once you have Francisco Lindor return? Well, as I've been thinking about this more, and I want to know how you Mets fans feel about this in the comments down below. So by all means, let me know, what do you think is the best course of action for the Mets? What are they going to do with Acuna upon Lindor's inevitable arrival that we're going to find out in the coming days, which we're all very excited about, don't get me wrong. But Acuna, is this a guy that you toy with Jose Iglesias' playing time at second base? Or, and this is a very interesting route to potentially go down, do the Mets consider really rotating more of that DH position, knowing how lethal that bat has been for Acuna? The defense has been tremendous. Is this an opportunity where the Mets may say, you know what, Vientos, maybe we're going to give you a little bit more reps at the DH position, and that means we could put Jose Iglesias at the hot corner, Luis Angel Acuna potentially at second base, so that way you deepen your lineup as much as possible, because as much as I love JD Martinez, we all know that JD is not the JD that was a couple years ago, currently here in Queens. Even last year, that is not the JD that the Mets are currently getting right now. With his continued inconsistencies, and the Mets wanting to put out the best lineup possible every day based on matchups, if you're not going to have Jesse Winker in there because, say, it's a lefty matchup as well, all the more reason make sure you have Acuna in the lineup, who's done very well against lefties to kick off his MLB career, and also make sure you have Jose Iglesias in there too. So don't be shocked if the Mets get pretty creative there with that DH position, knowing that Acuna has played himself into a position that warrants staying in this Metropolitan lineup until proven otherwise. So let's see what exactly transpires as he's going to match up against his Big Bros team there in Atlanta against those Braves. And something tells me at least one of those games, it's going to be a true Luis Angel Acuna game, and I cannot wait to see that happen. But going from the topics here of Francisco Lindor and Luis Angel Acuna, let's get into another positive one, because when we talk about returns against the Atlanta Braves, let's look no further than the Mr. Ghost Fork himself and Kodai Senga, because as you guys can see here, Kodai had himself his rehab outing yesterday, and it was brilliant. 1 inning pitch of 0 hit, 0 run baseball, 1 walk, 2 strikeouts, 15 pitches, 8 strikes. He topped out 95 on the gun that we saw, mixed in his ghost fork, his curve, his cutter, and his slider. So pretty much threw the entire kitchen sink at you. And the only reason why he didn't even go beyond an inning was, one, the Mets want to make sure he can pitch as soon as he can be called up. Pardon me, everybody, going to take one swig here. And also wanting to make sure that, he's not being overly worked or pushed, especially if the Mets want to make sure he eats some innings as soon as he can be called up, which is this Wednesday against the Atlanta Braves. So expect Wednesday or Thursday to be Kodai Senga start back in this Mets rotation, even if it's just for a couple innings. But Senga looked electric. He looks more of the same. And let's not forget, too, that in this outing against Syracuse, in part the reason why he didn't go deeper than the first wasn't all just the factors I just mentioned, but also the Syracuse Mets dominated last night at the time of recording this and scored 8 runs in the bottom of the first. So they didn't need Kodai Senga, rightfully so. And speaking of guys that balled out in that matchup that I do want to highlight here in a second, we are going to do exactly that. What I first want to ask each and every one of you is, what is not only your excitement level, but your expectation with someone like Kodai Senga upon his arrival at the middle of this week? Let me know in the comments down below, because as soon as I see that ghost fork working, that fastball lively, I am going to be a kid in a candy shop yet again, hopefully watching Kodai Senga take down these Atlanta Braves batters just like he did so gorgeously. Remember, he gave up that early run against Atlanta to kick off his first start of the season this year, and then he struck out like 8 or 9 batters and retired like 10 straight basically up until his injury. Yeah, that's the Kodai Senga that I want back and I expect back, and you guys should probably expect the same. And talking about expectation, Paul Blackburn is one that certainly expect to return to this Mets rotation sooner than he has at this point. Now Blackburn, who's still ramping himself up in rehab, is not going to be pitching for at least another week or so, and because of that reason, Carlos Mendoza, Mets skipper, said it himself, his season is coming to an end. So Paul Blackburn, if he does impact the Mets at all, it'll not be until earliest playoff time as probably a multi-inning reliever. Now, for the people that did not like the Paul Blackburn acquisition to begin with, this is something that you're either happy about or something that you're disappointed about, because you're like, okay, this was a star we brought in to give us more depth, give us more certainty, and now we don't have that. And yes, Tidwell McGill has been pitching great. I'm knocking on wood as I say this, because he's he's lined up to pitch tonight against the Philadelphia Phillies. So we'll see how he does in that matchup. It's going to be a big one. That one could make or break kind of the future for him in this rotation too. As we know, McGill is not expected to be a playoff starter for the Mets as of now. Sure, they crack postseason playing that wild card, but certainly an effective arm that the Mets can defer to, even if he's coming out of the bullpen for a couple innings. So that's the latest there on Paul Blackburn, as he's still working his way back there from having that kind of leak in with his spinal fluid, that entire situation. As bizarre as it is, it's very on par with us Mets fans, because when it comes to bizarre injuries they never heard of, step right up and meet the effing Mets, baby. That's typically how it works. But also what works is what the Syracuse Mets just did this past night, and they were absolutely dominant. And I would like to highlight a couple things about this, but let's actually start with one that isn't initially what you're thinking, and that's on the pitching end, because even though the Mets scored a boatload of runs there in Syracuse this past night, it was dominance by Blade Tidwell, and arguably his best start of the year, his final start of the year more than likely, there for Syracuse. 6 innings of 2 earned run balls, 0 walks, 3 strikeouts, 10 strikeouts, 3 hits allowed. What stands out is not only the tremendous strikeout rate, it's that walk rate. Blade Tidwell, Dominic Hamill, Mike Vassell, etc. What have all these Mets pitching prospects had in common at the AAA level this year? They have struggled mightily with their consistency and their command. To see Blade Tidwell to come out here and carve up batters in what is likely his final start of AAA this year is nothing to scoff at, and that is a great thing to be excited about and a momentum builder heading into 2025. So shout out to you, Blade. We're excited to see what you can do there for the Amazons as you're working oh so close to potentially being an MLB caliber player. You just got more fine-tuning to do, which is the case with a lot of guys at AAA for the Mets pitching prospects now, but Blade Tidwell riding high after a strong start, rightfully so. Now let's get into 2 guys who have been there, who have done that, who have been absolutely dominant for the Mets as of late. We're going to talk about some guys who are the Mets' top offensive prospects in the game right now, and let's start with Mr. Jet Williams, because Jet Williams, as I've spoken about plenty, folks, has been fantastic as of late. Jet, who was just recently called up to play the final week there at the AAA level. We're going to look through it together, folks. When we take a look at the game log lately here for Jet Williams and what he has been able to do this season, we absolutely have to highlight the brilliance which was him in these respective games as of late. Now, I would love to show you guys the Jet Williams stats, but of course, this page is taking forever to load. So give me a second to do exactly that. But Jet Williams is coming off of an outing where he was balling out yet again for AAA Syracuse. Mind you, Williams missed the majority of the season, as we know, due to a wrist injury, unfortunately. But that didn't waver him from having himself a big night last night where he went 2 for 4 with a walk and a double. Jet has driven in a couple runs as of late there for the Syracuse Mets. And there we go. Looks like it's finally going to load on me. There we go. When you look over the past couple games, Jet Williams last night we saw have himself a 2-hit game, which also included no RBIs. The night before had a 2-hit game as well. The night before that had himself a 1-hit game, and then a 2-hit game, and then a 1-hit game. So Jet, since being called up, funny enough, to AAA Syracuse, has had a hit in every single game. Very impressive, and I love that, because that too is a momentum builder as we then head to the 2025 season. Jet Williams and Drew Gilbert are both guys hoping to impact the Mets greatly next season. And speaking of the man, the myth, the legend himself, and Drew Gilbert, let's transfer exactly there. Because if you guys don't know Drew Gilbert, he is without question the Mets' top offensive prospect when we evaluate outfielders. Has so much home run heroics behind that bat, and he has been tearing the cover off the ball here in the month of September. He has posted right around a 500 OPS, a 337 on base percentage, and a 240 average or so in AAA this month. But let's not get it twisted. What he has done has been brilliant. Last night hit himself a home run that we saw, had him also just 1 hit total on the day and a total of 3 RBIs. The night before he had himself a home run, a 3-hit day, and 5 RBIs. Then a couple games ago he had himself another big day where he had multiple hits and he had 2 RBIs, then a 1 RBI day. So we have seen Drew Gilbert really tear the cover off the ball with power as of late at the AAA level, and seen Drew have a tremendous, really, the past 2 months. If we look at the AAA level, when we're looking at that power implementation, always no doubt home runs is what I love so much about Drew Gilbert, one of the sexiest swings among all minor league players and Major League Baseball right now. I gotta say, Drew Gilbert is a guy that wouldn't shock me that the Mets consider as a call-up. Now, is it on the outside looking in, given the roster configuration? Yes, absolutely. But there's a discussion to be had here with how great Drew Gilbert is playing to end his regular season at AAA. So my question to call to each and every one of you Mets fans is, do you think Drew Gilbert has done enough to warrant a September call-up, knowing how great he has been hitting for power over the past month and a half, really since ramping up back from injury, that he came back from that hammy injury all those months ago? So that's the latest there on Drew Gilbert, everybody, which is very exciting. Now, before we get out here, let's talk briefly about some awesome accolades that some Mets minor leaguers have received over the past 24 to 48 hours. And as you guys can see with me, Mets minor league Player of the Year on the offensive end was my guy, Nick Morabito. If you guys don't know Nick Morabito, he set the Brooklyn Cyclones record this year for the most hits in one regular season, so that's impressive enough. And then you add in, he's basically batting 300 all year and over 700 OPS, playing a strong defense as a leadoff hitter there for Brooklyn. I love Morabito all year long as a top-round draft pick by the Mets just a couple years ago. Morabito is a guy that certainly could impact the Mets as soon as next season if he plays his card right, and also has himself a strong spring training. And speaking of a strong spring training, I think we all know that's going to happen with the human highlight reel that is Brandon Sproat. Brandon Sproat, who was a high flyer in the Mets minor leagues in his first pro season, mind you, went all the way from low A Port St. Lucie to ending the season with AAA Syracuse. And there was a lot of discussion on if Brandon Sproat should be called up for the Mets as a multi-inning, flame-throwing 100-mile-per-hour reliever before the season's end. Sproat, who had a tremendous year across all minor league facets, definitely had some bumps and bruises when he was called to the AAA level, but that's normal, especially for a kid who's played at every single level in one regular season. I cannot begin to tell you how impressive Brandon Sproat has been, but how excited I am for him and Jonathan as we head into the 2025 seasons. Two guys that will inevitably be impacting the Mets. We'll just see to what degree that'll be. Brandon Sproat could very well be a potential NL Rookie of the Year candidate next year should he crack this Mets rotation from the jump, and all signs are pointing exactly in that direction. So that is all the latest Mets updates, folks. I hope you found yourself enjoying the content. Please let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. What was your biggest takeaway from the very positive Francisco Lindor news there, to the Kodai Senga news, to the unfortunate Paul Blackburn news, and then everything in between there on the prospects. Thank you all so much for watching. Stay tuned as we're going to have a jam-packed live post-game show tonight directly after the conclusion of hopefully the Metropolitans taking 3 out of 4 against the Phillies. And then we're also going to have a series preview against the Atlanta Braves early on Monday. And then we're going to have, of course, coverage after every single game throughout the week for the rest of the season heading into postseason play. Thank you all so much for the endless support. And as always, no matter what, let's go Mets, baby. Peace out.